Charlotte Evans was used to feeling grungy. As a freelancer, she traveled on a shoestring, getting stories other writers did not, precisely because she wasn't fussy about how she lived. In the last 12 months, she had survived dust while writing about elephant keepers in Kenya, ice while writing about the spirit bear of British Columbia, and flies while writing about a family of nomads in India. She could certainly survive a mizzling, as the Irish called it, though the heavy mist seeped through everything: jeans, boots, even the thick fisherman's sweater she wore. The sweater was on loan from the woman under whose roof she was sleeping, on this least populated of the 3 Aran Islands, and though Charlotte did have a fireplace in her bedroom, hot water was in short supply in the small stone cottage. She could have used a steamy shower, a thorough washing of her clothes, and a solid day of sun. Her assignment was to write about the youngest generation of Inishman knitters, women who were adapting traditional patterns in breathtaking ways, and as with the pattern on her own sweater, she could now describe moss stitch, panel repeats, right and left twists, and cable designs. It was time to leave. She had to go home to put the story together and get it to Vogue Knitting before heading to the Australian outback to do a piece on Aborigine jewelry making for National Geographic. A coup, that one. Still, she stayed here. Part of what kept her was the woman who owned the house, as warm and motherly as any she had ever met. Part was the craft that permeated the place. No knitter herself, she could watch these women for hours. They were at peace with themselves and their world, enviable for Charlotte, who had no roots at all. So close to her age that they might have been schoolmates, they were trying to teach her to knit. She told herself this was cause enough to stay. Bottom line, though, it was the island that kept her here. She had loved islands from the time she spent her first summer on one. She was 8 at the time. 34 now, she still felt the island aura, an isolation that made worries seem distant, a separation from the real world that lent itself to dreams. Her eyes went to the horizon, or where the horizon would have been if the mist weren't so dense. Thick a fog, they called it in that other place, and it lent a sheen to her skin and a bulk to her hair as it did there. She pulled those dark curls back now, fingers lost in the damp mass, and turned just enough on the scruffy cliff to face a few latitudinal degrees south. There, on the far side of the Atlantic, would be Maine. But despite the shared ocean, her island and this one were worlds apart. Where Inishman was gray and brown, its fragile man-made soils supporting only the hardiest of low-growing plants, the fertile Quinnipiac invited tall pines in droves, not to mention vegetables, flowers, and improbable, irrepressible herbs. Lifting her head, eyes closed now, she breathed in the damp Irish air and the bit of wood smoke that drifted on the cold ocean wind. Quinnipiac smelled of wood smoke, too, since early mornings there could be chilly, even in summer. But the wood smoke would clear by noon, giving way to the smell of lavender, balsam, and grass. If the winds were from the west, there would be fry smells from the chowder house. If from the south, the earthiness of the clam flats. If from the northeast, the purity of sweet salt air. Oh, yes, across the Atlantic would be Maine, she mused, as she opened her eyes and tried to penetrate that great distance through the fog. And this being April, she would think of it regardless of where she was. That was ingrained. Spring was when she started to plan her Quinnipiac summer. Or used to, but no more. She had burned that bridge 10 years ago with one stupid act. She couldn't go back, though she wished it sometimes. She missed the spirit of summer on Quinnipiac, so much more intense for being apart from the rest of the world. She missed Quinny lobster rolls, which tasted better than lobster rolls anywhere else. Mostly she missed Nicole, who had been as close as a sister to her once. She had never found another like her, though Lord knew she had searched. Perhaps that was what staying on Inishman was about. The women here could be friends. They understood independence and self-sufficiency. Charlotte had felt such instant rapport with several that she sensed they would keep in touch. Would? Maybe. More likely not, the realist in Charlotte admitted. For all the writing she did for a living, she was a lousy correspondent. Within a day or two, she would leave Inishman behind and return to Brooklyn. And from there, in addition to Australia, she had go-aheads to do stories in Tuscany and Bordeaux, the appeal of the latter being the lure of Paris before and after. She had friends there, a writer, a ceramist, and a would-be fashion designer whose clothes were too bizarre for mass appeal, but whose personal warmth was winning. Would it be the same as Quinnipiac time? No. But this was the life she had made.